How you guys doing today? Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiaga. Today is December the 6th, a Friday here, after a Thursday night where we had another classic NFC North game. I think it's becoming pretty routine that these games are some of the best of the entire year, and that's exactly what we got last night between the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers. It was a last second win by the Detroit Lions to ultimately come away with that game. So we're going to discuss that, review it, and talk about everything that came from that game. Also, we have the odd, surprising, and just unexpected news of Bill Belichick interviewing for the UNC job. Pretty random, pretty noteworthy as well. So we're going to discuss it, my thoughts on it, and the likelihood of whether or not Bill Belichick is going to go to college instead of the NFL is insane. And also, we're going to get to our game picks, part 2, that we didn't finish yesterday. So we're going to get to that all in today's show. So make sure to stick around and stay tuned for that. But before we get started, though, I'd like to remind you guys, as always, if you guys have any questions or comments or any opinions you'd like to share and just really get involved with the show, please go ahead and do it. Don't hesitate. We always value anything you guys have to say. Your input, your insight always adds to the show and makes it better in our opinion. So please go ahead and do that. And if you want to make it absolutely sure that your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that just by using the new Super Chat feature. You can use the new Super Chat feature just by clicking the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your Super Chat. In this way, it guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel, and we rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit the Super Chat button and get involved with the show. Again, use the $ at the bottom of the chat box and get involved. Let me know what you guys are thinking. There's always a lot that we always like to hear from you guys. So that is that. But on to the matter at hand, talking about more football and the game that we saw last night. Another great game produced by the NFC North, which really just culminated in Detroit sweeping the Green Bay Packers this year in the regular season with a game-winning field goal by Jake Bates. The final score was 34-31 in favor of the Lions, and with that win, the Detroit Lions have guaranteed themselves a playoff spot after their 11th straight win this season. They now go to 12-1, and that keeps them away from the Minnesota Vikings and the Philadelphia Eagles, who are chasing after them for that number 1 seed. We talked about the significance of this game and this run of game that the Lions were going to go on, playing the Packers, playing the Bills, playing the 49ers eventually, right? And still, playing the Vikings still and the Chicago Bears. None really easy. No games that are going to be cakewalks by any means. So, it was going to be important because the distance between the 1 seed and the 2nd seed was just one game. So this game was of the utmost importance for the Lions, and they took care of business in the most unorthodox, surprising, and just uniquely expected. Kind of an oxymoron there, but I think it fits for Dan Campbell and this Detroit Lions team, right? Because it's so out of the ordinary, so unexpected that they go for it 5 times yesterday, and they convert on 4 of them, and especially that last one, right? Everyone is thinking they're just going to kick the field goal. It's the logical thing to do. Everyone's going to do it. Why risk it? And that almost came into fruition, right? With Jared Goff sort of tripping over himself, or really getting stepped on and falling down, and it almost turned into a complete mess. But David Montgomery was able to handle the handoff, and he got the first down. And basically, that was the end of the game. Jake Bates hits an easy chip shot field goal, and they win the game. But of course, this is a situation where you convert it, you're a hero, you're a genius. But if you don't, you're an absolute clown. Everyone's, making fun of the decision. Everyone's questioning you, criticizing you, right? You live and die by the sword. And Dan Campbell is not scared of that at all, which is very appreciated by, I guess, myself, and I'm sure a lot of people. And knowing knowing as a fan is what I'm trying to say, that you have a coach like this that not only, drives you a little bit crazy maybe with these decisions and your anxiety might go up a lot in these games, right, for how often you go for it, but it's who he is. It's not like, he's very risky one time, he's pretty conservative the other time. You know what you're going to get with Dan Campbell, and I think you can appreciate that, knowing that you're going to get the same guy, same aggressive, mindset. And it ultimately won them the game, because you look at the Green Bay Packers on the other hand, and they were firing. They were not missing on offense, right? If it wasn't for an offensive pass interference on Josh Jacobs there in the fourth quarter, Green Bay would have scored 5 touchdowns and would have been 5 for 5 in the red zone. But because that, pass interference was called, they settled for that field goal. The Lions were able to go down and convert those fourth downs and ultimately win the game. Not directly because of it, but you look at it now and you look back at it in hindsight, that was obviously going to be a huge change in the game plan and everything like that. And, you don't know what would have happened after that, but it would have definitely been impressive. It was impressive at the time when I was watching the game and they showed it, that Green Bay was 4 for 4 in the red zone. And I'm thinking, like, I had no idea that they were, that efficient in the red zone. And that's huge when you want to beat a team like this, to go toe to toe with them and score and put up points like that. Not to mention that they got that turnover and their defense was able to make a couple stops as well. The Packers did almost everything perfect except that unfortunate offensive pass interference. But, everything else in this game, it was firing right from the start when Detroit opened up the game, setting the tone with an opening drive touchdown. Then there was a bit of a lull with both teams punting 4 times, but after that, the points started flowing. Christian Watson had a big gain, but then he fumbled, and the Lions recovered it, and they were able to go up 10-0 before Green Bay finally scored, making it 10-7. But then Detroit answered right away. They got another touchdown, and it was 17-7 at halftime. The Lions clearly coming to play a bit earlier than the Green Bay Packers, but the game, I thought, completely took a different turn when Green Bay in the second half, they scored a touchdown, so they cut it back down to 3 points again. But then Jared Goff threw a pretty surprising interception, just because, we hardly ever see Jared throw one. So the fact that Green Bay got a turnover there, especially in the Packers territory, and then they scored off of it, it was a big, a big haymaker that they were able to land on the Detroit Lions, right? Kind of punching back. And during this fight, the Lions were sort of stunned a little bit there, right? The turnover leading directly to a touchdown. Now the Packers have the lead, right? It was pretty crazy from that point on, but then both teams kind of exchanged touchdowns from there. Detroit scored, then the Packers actually stopped them on fourth down, the only time that they didn't get it, and it led to another touchdown by Green Bay. So at this point, it's 24-28 in favor of the Green Bay Packers, but once again, the Lions scored, and it's 31-28. Then we had that offensive pass interference, like I said, and it got to 31-31, obviously, right? Because the Packers really had no other choice but to at least tie it up there rather than maybe not get another opportunity to. So they tied it up, and then Detroit had a great final drive to kind of ice it and win the game ultimately, right? And I thought it was interesting how, the Packers were up for this game, right? They did, like I said, they did a lot of things right. They were almost perfect, putting up points, and when they had the opportunity to be in the red zone, they converted with touchdowns. But I thought it was interesting how the Lions kind of countered the Packers' efficiency and their performance on offense with all these risky fourth down calls, right? They were 4 for 5 on the day. And basically, I really liked what Dan Campbell said at the end, right? He said that he felt that this was going to be the way that they won this game, right? He knew that it was going to be potentially a shootout, that they were going to have to play exceptional football to beat a team like the Packers, right? And he was right. The Packers came out, and again, they did almost everything perfectly. And 3 points, field goals were not going to do the job in this game. There was a lot of times where on third downs you get stopped at the goal line, and Dan Campbell could have done the typical safe thing of just kicking field goals and, thinking in his mind, I need to get at least 3 points here, right? There's no way I go away without this drive and not get any sort of points, so we'll just kick the field goal. But the way things were going in this game, there was really no defense being played, right? If Detroit's defense got the ball back, they were really not stopping Jordan Love. Jordan Love was passing all over them. Obviously, the injuries and things like that play into that. So I like the fact that Dan Campbell took the initiative and said, we're going to rely on our offense. They need to step up this game, and we need that from them to win this game. And they responded, and they ended up winning in dramatic fashion, but still, it was an electrifying win. They clinched the playoff berth, and it was really just a game of who was going to fall first, who was going to fail, right? Kind of like in basketball where you're going shot for shot, everybody's hitting everything. It really just comes down to the luck of somebody missing a shot, and I felt like that's what this game really came down to. And I thought it was Detroit. I thought it was going to be Detroit that failed ultimately when that fourth down didn't go their way, but again, the offensive pass interference hurt them, and whichever defense was on the field last, unfortunately, it seemed like they were going to lose the game because as much as the Lions weren't stopping the Packers, the Packers defense wasn't really stopping the Lions either. So it was a very offensive-based game, and the Lions won. They're closer to that number 1 seed, but they still have to keep their pace because the Eagles are right there behind them, and not to mention the Minnesota Vikings as well. So we're going to talk more about this subject in the next segment. We're going to talk more about these risky fourth down calls and our thoughts on the Green Bay Packers, right? Because after such an impressive performance to not win the game, does that really knock you off the Packers or maybe makes you feel more optimistic about them, right? We're going to answer that in the next segment, but we're going to hit a quick break and we'll be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Back here on the Chip Shot Football Podcast, to not go too far away from what we just finished talking about in the Lions and Packers game last night. Again, if for whatever reason you missed out on the game, the Lions won the game 34-31. They clinched a playoff berth and they moved to 12-1. But, after last night's game with the Lions winning, one of the questions that is prompted right away is the other side of things, right? The Packers, where a lot of teams can't really say they took the Lions to a last-ditch effort to win the game. Not a lot of teams really could say that this year, the way the Lions have dominated everybody. But the Packers really, I would say, put on the best performance by a losing team. And I know maybe moral victories don't mean anything to some people, but I think in this instance, it's just a little different because I know the Packers are 9-4 now, right? And if they would have won this game, maybe they would have been alive in the division, and now they've lost both games to the Lions. And not only that, but if you kind of go back a little bit in this series, right, they've lost both games now by a combined 13 points, and it's also the Lions' 6th win over Green Bay in the past 7 games between each other, and that goes back to 2021. And Jordan Love is 1-3 against the Lions now. So you look at that, and then you look at the loss last night. They're 9-4. You're a little bit unsure about them. I might even say that some people are thinking about jumping off the bus, right, for the Green Bay Packers. Like maybe this team, when it comes to these big games, when it comes to the Lions, if they face them again, what makes me believe that they're going to beat them, right? After I just read all of that, what makes you believe that the Packers can beat them, just in the playoffs now, right? Maybe when the Lions have home field advantage, right? It doesn't look great, but it feels like you can't. It feels like the one team, like where you run into them, like, oh man, like, here we go, we're just going to lose again, right? We just can't beat this team for whatever reason. But I don't think it sways me away from the Packers that much at 9-4, because I know also what I didn't mention is that the Packers this year have only really beaten one team over 500, and that was the Houston Texans at the time. And all of their losses have been to, three of the best teams in the NFC, right? The Lions, they lost by them to a combined 13 points. They lost to the Vikings by only 2 points, and they lost to the Eagles by 5 points. You're going to have to beat maybe one or two of them. Definitely one of them. You're going to probably have to beat, like I said, two or at least one of those teams if you're going to make it to the Super Bowl ultimately as the final goal. So the record itself already doesn't give you a lot of confidence, and also the fact that, defeating teams over 500 doesn't look too promising either. But you can look at that and as a fact that they're, at least competing with these teams. And again, that sounds like honestly, like loser talk. Like, we're not here to just compete, right? We're here to beat these teams. And I understand that, but I think once you get into the playoffs, it's just like a different, I like the fact that it is a different sort of playing field. It feels like there's no favorites. Anybody can beat anybody, especially this year, right? There's been a lot of parity in the NFL, but there's also the fact that, you have that mental thing, right? Where you lost to this team, you got swept by this team, or you lost by them barely by this much, or, whatever the circumstance may be, that is in your head. So you do have to kind of deal with that. But I feel like the fact that the playoffs are just kind of like a clean slate and you sort of forget about the regular season and things like that, I like the chances. And I think competing is the biggest thing, right? It's one thing if the Packers, lost by 10 the first time, and then this time they would have lost by like 14, then I'd be a little bit more, doubtful about them. But the fact that they were so close, the fact that they were so efficient in the red zone, and the fact that that I love the way Josh Jacobs is playing now. They're using him a lot more. He's become the focal point of their offense, and I love the way, again, that they're using him, the amount of times they're using him, while also sprinkling in, some big plays to Christian Watson, or getting Jaden Reed involved, or Romeo Doubs when he comes back is going to be a huge help. Dontavius Wicks made a couple big plays last night, and you saw Tucker Kraft as well. He's a real weapon for them as well. So I think all of that, seeing how they play the Lions, and they're going to play the Vikings still, I'm pretty sure, at some point in the rest of the season. So all of that is giving me a bit more optimism about them. And I know also something to consider is that for the Lions especially, beating a team 3 times in a season, it feels like these two teams could see each other again. That's also pretty hard, right? As on top of the fact that the playoffs are like a whole new thing, beating a team 3 times in a season is pretty hard to do. At that point, you're talking about a, NBA playoff series, right? You know each other very well, the strengths, the weaknesses, the tendencies. At that point, if you've already lost twice, when you get into those tight games, anything can happen. And the Eagles too, and even for the Vikings as well. If the Vikings beat them, it's going to be hard to beat the Packers 3 times. So that's why I'm not jumping too far away from the Packers. I think the way that they're built and what they have at their disposal, it's possible. It's not like it's impossible for them to do. Like, I think it would be impossible for, like, the Falcons to beat the Lions, right? Because that defense can't really hold up against the Lions, and on the offensive side of the ball, you do have some struggles, right? Or the Seahawks in that same breath. So I think the Packers definitely have one of the better shots to, still be considered a contender, I'll say. So I wanted to get that out because, some people might be pretty down on the Packers, but I'm just kind of warning, don't jump off of them too quick, right? They are still a very well put together team. But speaking of well put together teams, we have to talk further about the Detroit Lions, right? After last night's game, what's so fascinating and what's been dominating the conversations today, obviously, after the game, are all the fourth down calls that the Lions are very good at converting. Over the last 2 games with the Packers, this season, the Lions have gone 6 for 7 with 4 touchdowns on fourth down in 2 games with the Green Bay Packers this year. They were 4 for 5 last night. They scored on a couple of those fourth downs. They scored on a fourth down, I believe, in the first matchup against the Packers in Green Bay as well. So those are remarkable. Those are exceptional stats, right, to have. And also, to be fair, this is just who Dan Campbell is. I mentioned it before in the first segment. Despite how different it is from the rest of the NFL, he is very adamant on not only doing this because he feels very strongly about it, but trusting his players to go out there and get it and execute. He knows he has some of the best players to go out and convert these fourth downs, right? Jared Goff is a big quarterback. He can go in there and convert a quarterback sneak like he did last night, or you can bring in David Montgomery, smash mouth running back, can get you a yard. You have the best offensive line in football as well, right? One of the best offensive linemen in Penei Sewell. Just put him in there and run behind him. And even Jahmyr Gibbs as well. We saw him score on that Texas route, right? They put him in. You probably could have predicted that the ball was going to him. I know Amon-Ra St. Brown wasn't on the field, and everything else was pretty much man-on-man. So when he ran that Texas route, it was easy, right? He's a mismatch for almost anybody you put on him. So they have all the guys. They have all the talent in the world to convert these fourth downs. And especially on that 4th and 30, that one, to go on it on that play, that's when it might seem like a little bit aggressive. That's the only time maybe you could argue, like, maybe we should punt. I don't know. But, it is just another sign that he lives and dies by what he believes in. And I will say I didn't like that call because that one was really bothering me. I hate when it's a 4th and 1 and you're trying to kind of overthink it, that the opposing team knows that you're going to run a quarterback sneak, so let's be tricky and let's throw it to the outside, right? It almost never works, and I hate when teams do it. I know the Packers put 2 defensive linemen in the A gap to kind of stop the Lions from running that quarterback sneak, but even still, I'm just handing it off at that point. I hate when you have to get a yard going forward and you throw it like 4 yards, like laterally. I don't like it. It annoys me, but that's really the only thing that didn't work in their favor last night when it came to fourth downs. And also, I don't think it's a coincidence that the team that's super aggressive and that's considered the best team in the NFL right now is, playing this way, right? If they're playing this style, and maybe if they were like 500 or something, or in the wild card spots, I don't know. If they were something like that, then maybe I think you could question it a lot more, but this has been, without a doubt, the best team in the NFL, and through their own way of doing it, through their own way of being aggressive and going for it on fourth down, I don't think that's just a coincidence. This is clearly working, and it's working for them, right? It's not for everybody. A lot of people are pretty conservative and like to play it through the analytics and things like that. So, all I know is that playing and knowing that you're playing with 4 downs instead of 3, opens up that playbook a little bit more. Especially, again, I know not everybody has the personnel that the Lions do, but that's just another thing that works in their benefit, and they're definitely benefiting off of that. And it shouldn't be a worry now. I don't think, they could continue doing it in the regular season, but in the playoffs, I will admit, I don't want them to change, right? I'm not backing down on, doubling down on who you are as a coach, who you are as an identity. If you're this aggressive, show it, right? A lot of people criticized the Ravens last year, right? And a couple times this year for going away from who they were. If this is who the Lions are, they showed it in the NFC Championship, right? Dan Campbell owned it afterwards. Maybe it was a mistake to do it then. But he doubled down and he said that this is who they are. They haven't changed going into this year, and I don't want them to change in the playoffs, but I hope that it at least has served as a learning lesson that maybe going for it in your own territory, maybe that's not the place to do it, depending on the circumstance, obviously, right? But that's really the only thing that I would like to see them, I guess, grow from or learn from. Don't be too stubborn to punt the ball or perhaps take a field goal. Again, depending on the circumstances of the game, the time on the game, and everything like that. But if it's in the middle of the game, you're in opposing territory and things like that, and you're not going to lose the game right there, go for it. That's who you are. If you think you can get it, you definitely have the guys to do it. I don't think it's a worry, and I don't think it's a concern, really, for them to keep doing it. I really don't, because this is who they are, and it's gotten them to 12-1. So to stop that just because it seems a little bit too risky, I think that would be foolish of the Detroit Lions. So that is all that we're going to say on that game. It was a great game. There was a lot to take from it, but the Lions continue to move on in this season. But now we're going to step away sort of from the NFL and kind of talk about the college level and how it relates, is because Bill Belichick, the Hall of Fame coach, arguably the best coach in NFL history, is considering coaching at the college level at this point in his career. It is what was been reported. It's been confirmed, and I mean, we're going to react to it. It wasn't something that I was planning on talking about, but it's so unique and just unexpected that I had to bring it up and go over all the facts and give my thoughts on it. So we're going to discuss that and Bill Belichick right after this.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
We are back now on the Chip Shot Football Podcast to go over something that I feel like wasn't talked about too much. I feel like when I saw this report, I had to read it a couple times and kind of confirm that it was true about Bill Belichick and the possibility that he could be coaching at the college level, because this was the most random, like, unexpected report to just drop on a Thursday or Wednesday. I forget which one it was. It was probably yesterday, but I see it on my phone and I'm thinking like why? Like, how is that even a thing? Because according to a report from Inside Carolina and according to Grant Hughes, specifically from 247 Sports, he informed that Bill Belichick had just interviewed with UNC for the head coaching spot just yesterday when the news dropped. And that job is obviously vacant right now because UNC fired Mac Brown last month. And now, further on that report, Bill Belichick joins other reported head coaching candidates like Tulane head coach John Sumrall and Georgia defensive coordinator Glenn Schumann as the other candidates that UNC has spoken with about this vacant head coaching position that they have at their university. And again, it seems surreal to be talking about it because Bill Belichick should be coaching at the NFL level. Somebody should have offered him a position this year. I firmly believe that. But for whatever reason, personal reasons or, personality reasons or whatever the reasons may be, Bill Belichick has become a media superstar, right? He's all over the place on the Pat McAfee show, on Inside the NFL. He's on the Manning Cast. He has his own show, I'm pretty sure. So he's, buying time right now, but the report has always been that he's wanted and he still wants to coach in the NFL. But I guess now that's maybe swayed to he just wants to coach still, not specifically in the NFL. And it looks like he could be open to coaching at the college level, which other reports have followed the initial report by Grant Hughes. And we had Jordan Schultz from Fox Sports mention that most are skeptical that Belichick would seriously consider coaching at the college at the college game, even with the landscape shifting toward an NFL-style model. Then Jordan Schultz continued, and he mentioned how an NFL executive told him, he said he believes Bill Belichick is being strategic, using this to push NFL teams to act faster and to make it widely known that he plans to return in 2025, which was then followed up by another report by The Athletic, which said that Bill Belichick is open to both the NFL and college football. He's not ruling anything out at this point in time. So, a bit contradictory there, right? We have one report saying that he is just kind of using it as a ploy to get NFL teams to kind of speed up the process and maybe not want to lose out on the greatest head coach in NFL history, right? If they see he could be going to college, let's give him a call. Maybe instead of the end of the season like we had planned, let's give him a call in a couple weeks or this upcoming weekend, right? So that makes sense. But also, the fact that maybe he's not ruling it out and that he could actually be considering it, I find it hard to believe. It just feels wrong. Like, it shouldn't have come to this. And I don't want to, like, diminish the college game, because the college game is at an all-time high right now, I feel like. There's more eyes on it than ever, right? You have the NIL situation there and how that continues to grow. Deion Sanders has definitely helped it to grow a lot more. And, with the expansion of the playoffs now, you have more opportunities for, other programs to get in, for the exposure and all that sort of thing, right? College is exploding at this point in time, right? It's on fire right now, basically. So I don't want to diminish it, because definitely it doesn't deserve that. But I do believe Bill Belichick will be coaching next year. But again, I never thought it would be at the college level. And I don't want to also trash UNC or make it seem like there's no way they should get him. Like, they don't deserve Bill Belichick or anything like that. But I feel like the matchup, the timing, and everything like that wouldn't really make sense, because UNC, it still feels like they're a ways away from being a top-tier program in college football, right? Because you look at this one stat, and they've had double-digit wins only one time since 1997. They were 6-6 this past year, and I just don't feel like, based on the timing and everything like that and where both parties are at this point in time, that the timeline doesn't really make sense for Bill Belichick to go in there at this point in time, where this feels like a much more of a long-term project, right? Coming in, establishing a culture, building it up from there, and, just building it up from the ground up, kind of like Deion Sanders has done it. And I guess, to be fair to a guy like Deion Sanders or even Bill Belichick, right? Deion's built it up and has it where it is right now in a matter of just 2 seasons. So I guess it's not impossible, but that also plays into some of the other points that I wanted to make. But of course, it's still Bill Belichick, and you do see the attraction, right? That for a college kid coming in, this is a guy that you've watched probably your entire life, quite honestly, winning Super Bowls, success after success, championships after championship, and just the epitome of hard work and the ultimate concentration and focus to get and build the dynasty, right? Get everything you'd want out of the game, out of the sport, and, to build a dynasty, right? That's the obvious natural attraction when you see Bill Belichick, trying to get you to play for this organization, right? This university. But the connection, the attraction most likely ends at the recognition and at the respect, right? Obviously, that you have for Bill Belichick or just any legend like that, right? Same thing goes for Deion Sanders. But I think the disconnect and the similarities end at the fact that you recognize it's Bill Belichick, a Hall of Famer, a living legend. But then after that, I feel like the connection, the pairing of this kind of starts to die off. And what I mean by that is, the first thing that's obvious is that Bill Belichick is going to be 73 years old in April and would be entering into a brand new landscape for him, right? He hasn't ever been at the college level, and you can bring some things, right? Obviously, it's still football, different rules for certain circumstances, but it's still football. This is still Bill Belichick, right? Why wouldn't you want him to come in here? But on his side of things, brand new landscape, right? You want to bring as much experience that you have at the NFL level, right? Because that's where you are arguably the most successful at doing what you do. But it's not the same, personnel, different, atmosphere, being in and around college and things like that. It's not like a place of work. It kind of looks like that now with NIL and things like that, but it's still not the same thing. So that's one thing. And then success at coaching is success at coaching, right? But he had, if you really want to like nitpick it, going back to his most recent jobs with the New England Patriots, he had a losing record in 3 of the last 4 seasons there with New England. So, I mean, it doesn't demoralize or diminish everything else he's obviously done, right? But still, some people might look at that and think, well, he's great, he has all this history, but what has he done for me lately? And it always feels like it comes down to that, right? So that's another thing. That's just a fact, right? You can take it however you want to take it. But also the college game today is almost like so new, even for the guys that are currently in it. It feels like, the programs that are at the top of the top, even they are, or they were maybe a year or 2 ago, they were even struggling trying to navigate through this new NIL landscape and how to, deal with players, how to recruit players and all that. Everything was brand new even for them. So I can't really imagine, Bill Belichick stepping into this world now kind of like 3 steps or 2 steps behind where everybody else is currently, right? For him to step in and, kind of navigate himself through this time kind of extends the length of this project, right? He first has to come in, get accommodated to everything, and then we could start building on it, right? So that just adds even more to it. For Bill to just kind of slide in here, it's not that easy. So that's another thing. And, at the NFL level, you're dealing with professionals, right? Obviously, that's the biggest thing. But at college, it's not like you're the general manager or just the head coach that you have to focus on these game plans and how to execute everything and, running an organization, right? At the college level, there's obviously the managing of the transfer portal, right? And, the idea that the roster is ever changing and there's less structure in a way in college, and trying to control that, obviously at the college level, is much different than the NFL level, right? It's hard to really build a culture and a system there, right, that hasn't already been there, right? For Bill Belichick to just come in here and kind of do that and get the success that you'd expect from Bill Belichick is going to be even tougher because of this new landscape of the transfer portal and everything and going out there. You imagine Bill Belichick going to these different places and trying to recruit all these different players. Of course, you're going to have the wave of players that just come in and come to Bill because it's Bill Belichick, but still, to get the best of the best that want to play at some of the best programs, just overall, he's going to have to go to all these different places. And could you imagine just Bill Belichick doing this at 73 years old? It's kind of ridiculous to think about, and he's going to be actively doing it. Like I said, that's a lot of travel for Bill Belichick to just go drop everything and do. And then, again, the biggest thing, 73 years old, coach, connecting with kids that are like 19, 18. It's kind of funny, but it's still also serious. It's like how do you talk and make a relationship or a connection with a guy that, you don't want to poke fun at it because, like, Bill's obviously a lot older, but with that comes experience and the endless knowledge and everything like that, right? You respect Bill Belichick, but what kind of conversation can you have with, like, essentially, like, maybe, like, your grandchild or something like that, right? It's nuts to think about. And of course, maybe that hasn't been Bill Belichick's MO to be the relationship guy. He's all about business and structure and doing it the Patriot way. But that's at the NFL level, right? That's professionals that get paid to come in and do this. Not everyone at this level is getting paid. Especially not to kind of deal with it for a year. If they could just, pick things up and leave and go to another organization, right? So if this is going to work for Bill Belichick, I feel like it's going to have to change a lot of who he has been as a coach. And I think rather than that, why not just look at the NFL? I get it that maybe, you want to be open to everything, but there's teams in the NFL, like maybe, obviously you have the Dallas Cowboys that would need a coach, but the dynamic with Jerry Jones maybe isn't all there. The New York Jets are going to need a coach, but, him being with the Patriots, is he really going to go coach the Jets? Probably not, but that's still an option. The Jacksonville Jaguars, it's a longer term project, so I don't know if the timelines really meet up, but that wouldn't be such a bad spot because they have a quarterback. The Cincinnati Bengals is an interesting one that I thought of because, Zach Taylor's there. There's no real hot seat that I've heard a lot from him, but, I don't know. I feel like I can't be the only one to think that, Zach isn't the difference maker per se, and especially after a year like this, if you want to see change, bring in a guy like Bill Belichick that's all about business, that's all about winning. I think having a guy like Joe Burrow that's kind of similar to Tom in that way, I think would meet up perfectly. Elsewhere could be like Las Vegas. Obviously reuniting with Tom Brady, he would have all the resources there to do whatever he wants, so that would be a pretty interesting fit. Tampa Bay would be another one. I know Todd Bowles isn't clamoring people to kind of get him out of there, but also that would be an interesting one with Baker, and they have endless amount of weapons there too, so I would like that fit as well. And then of course you have Chicago, but I don't know if that's really the ultimate pairing. Having some sort of structure, I guess it would be having some sort of structure and complete order come in there from a guy like Bill Belichick, and really no funny business, no messing around, and it's all about results. It sounds like something Chicago would need and does need at this point, so, why not? But I think the best spots could be Jacksonville or Cincinnati, or actually, I'll change that. I think Jacksonville or Las Vegas would be the most interesting ones for me, because, Dallas is the one that's always going to get mentioned, but I don't think Jerry and him would really mix, so I think Cincinnati and Las Vegas Cincinnati, Las Vegas, and Jacksonville would be the most interesting ones, in my opinion. But, all of this was sparked with the idea that Bill could potentially end up in college, which would be super ridiculous and only add to the craziness of college football. So maybe it fits, but I don't want to say I hope it doesn't happen, but I think he just needs to be in the NFL. So speaking of the NFL, we're going to get back to talking about these games. We're going to go to part 2 of the game picks for Week 14 in the NFL. I'm going to go through the last 5 games here and just give my thoughts, my predictions, and why I think these 5 teams are going to come out with the victory on Sunday. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Alright guys, we are back here on the show now, and we're going to go through part 2 of the Week 14 game picks here for the NFL. We went through the first 5 games yesterday, not counting the Falcons game because we already previewed that before. So we had 5 games yesterday, and now we're going to go through the last remaining 5 here on today's show to close out the week. So starting off with a AFC East matchup, the first matchup between these two teams this year. And actually, the Dolphins are the only team Aaron Rodgers has not played yet in the division at all. Because last year, obviously, he got hurt. And this year, it's been pushed all the way to Week 14 for the first time the Jets play the Dolphins, right? They were not going to play the second game until the last week of the NFL regular season. So Aaron Rodgers has still not matched up with Mike McDaniel and Anthony Weaver and, Tua Tagovailoa, those guys over there in Miami. So that's pretty interesting. That's a reason to watch this game, even if maybe, the Jets are what the Jets are right now, and the Dolphins mathematically aren't eliminated from the playoffs, but the loss to Green Bay definitely hurts. You felt like you needed that, not only for the win, obviously, but to kind of shut up all these narratives about the warm weather and, not being able to win in the playoffs and things like that. So the fact that they lost once again definitely hurts and doesn't have a lot of people buying stock in the Dolphins per se to kind of make the playoffs. So that's one thing. And, the Jets at this point, they're just trying to put out the best product that they can out there on the football field. And right now the Jets also just gave up 2 comeback wins to Indianapolis and to Seattle as well. So, things just feel like they're unable to go right for the Jets, even if they do. They did play pretty well in the game against the Colts and even in the game against Seattle. But the game against Seattle, they were held scoreless in the second half. So there are some good moments, but it's not a complete performance, which is frustrating. And, just in terms of this game, where Miami are and where the Jets are right now, the Jets are 1-6 on the road right now. And I think it's very beneficial for the Dolphins, obviously, for this game to be in Miami, right? Because if it was in New York and we had like 40, 50-degree weather, maybe the Jets could have won this game. But I'm going to go with the Dolphins because the weather's going to be great. The Jets haven't been looking very good either. So the Dolphins, the way they're playing especially, I think for the most part have been a lot better, obviously, with Tua. So I'm going to go with the Dolphins to win this game in the first matchup between Aaron Rodgers and the Miami Dolphins while he's been in New York. Then moving down to another divisional game, we have the Seattle Seahawks playing against the Arizona Cardinals. These two teams just played against each other about 2 weeks ago. They were just flipped on your screen, right? The Cardinals were playing at Seattle. Now Seattle goes down to Arizona to take on the Arizona Cardinals. And the last game in Seattle was very bad for the Cardinals, right? The offense was very bad. They only put up 6 points. And, defensively, they were all right. They only allowed Seattle to score 16. But again, the offense really let them down on that day. And Arizona, they just lost a heartbreaker to the Minnesota Vikings. They pushed them to their absolute limit, which is encouraging, but you would have really liked to have won that game to head into this game with at least some sort of momentum since the last time you played the Seahawks. But, it is what it is now. And, to make matters worse for the Cardinals, right, the Seahawks have been playing, I think, a lot more clean and just more efficient football since their bye week. They came back. They, I believe they're on a 3-game win streak now with wins over the 49ers, the Cardinals, and now the Jets, right? I think that's pretty accurate. So they've been playing arguably the best football of the year. So with that being said, it doesn't take away from the importance of this game, though, right? They're on a good track, but it's not a reason to kind of be like, oh, we're just going to go in. We already beat this team like 2 weeks ago. We're just going to beat them again. Because both teams could be 7-6 if the Cardinals win this game. And, that's obviously important because I keep saying that I feel like the division winner of the NFC West is going to be the only team to make the playoffs because I believe that the Commanders are going to make it. So that would really only mean the winner of the division would make it. So the fact that the Cardinals could be tied with the Seahawks for, first in the division is huge. So it's not a game that the Seahawks can just take lightly, even if it is true that they've won the last 6 games against Arizona. This season has been full of parity, right? Full of unexpected, results. So I would not expect that this is just going to be a cakewalk for Seattle. So because of that reason, I'm going to go with the Cardinals. I think they've been pretty unlucky the last couple weeks. They absolutely need this game. I'm rooting for the Cardinals because I want to see more drama in that division. So I expect the run game to be better, and I saw a bit more from Kyler Murray in the Vikings game this past week. So they're definitely going to need points, obviously, in this game. So I'm going to go and hope for the Cardinals to win this game. I think they will, and just add more drama to the NFC West. But moving down now to a pretty entertaining game, hopefully, in the Buffalo Bills and the Los Angeles Rams. Both of them also are chasing a lot like the Arizona Cardinals are, like the Seattle Seahawks are as well, because a win for Buffalo, I mean, they're going to make the playoffs, obviously, but a win for Buffalo would keep them in the race for the number one seed, really, especially when we're going to talk about the Chiefs a little bit later on. But, yeah, I mean, they want to get the number one seed. That's what Sean McDermott said. They already achieved the goal of winning their division. Now they're chasing the number one seed and having home field advantage, right? It makes sense because the Bills are one of, if not the only undefeated team at home. So, obviously, Orchard Park up there in Buffalo in the cold, nobody wants to play there. So I think, they're obviously chasing that right now, and a win would definitely help that cause, obviously. And on the other side of things, for the Los Angeles Rams, we talked about the Seahawks and the Cardinals potentially being 7-6, both of them, if the Cardinals win this game. But also, you can't forget about the Rams. If the Rams win, they would also be 7-6. So if they win and the Cardinals also win, you're talking about 3 teams in that division that are 7-6. Again, all fighting for one spot, probably to get in the playoffs. So that is just adding a lot more to the Seahawks game and this Rams game, obviously. Los Angeles is a bit unpredictable, though, because of the offense. I mean, it has the potential, the ceiling to be the best in the NFL, but sometimes, like we saw against the Saints, they didn't score a single point in the first half, and you can't afford to do that against the Buffalo Bills. I mean, you do benefit that you are at home, but the Bills play a style of football that obviously travels. They have the favorite for the MVP on their sideline as well. So they can't afford to have missed opportunities, settle for field goals, really. I'm not saying that they have to be the Detroit Lions or even the Green Bay Packers, right, going 5 for 5 in the red zone. But when you have obvious moments to take advantage of, just don't miss is really the only thing I could say, because the Bills are playing some of the best football in the NFL right now. And I do worry, though, about the Rams defense, though, because as good as the offense is, the Rams defense is even more of a question mark, in my opinion, than the offense is. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what their approach to stopping Josh Allen is going to be in this game. I mean, they do benefit that it is home and they don't have to go through that plane trip, obviously. But with all that being said, I would be remiss if I go against Josh Allen, so I'm going to go with the Bills. They have a great team. They're playing great, and they obviously have the guy that can do no wrong in Josh Allen. So, on and off the field, by the way, congrats to him. But, I think that LA just might not be able to put up 7 points consistently, where I have more trust in the Buffalo Bills to do that. So, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with the Bills to win on the road. Then we get into some interesting matchups here with the Chicago Bears and the San Francisco 49ers. This is the classic game of the interim head coach gets the job, obviously, right? He gets promoted. He's facing a team that's, probably considerably better, you would think. And for some reason, like it always tends to happen, the interim head coach pulls out a win, and I think that's going to be the case in this game. I think Thomas Brown has been doing a phenomenal job with Caleb Williams. The offense obviously looks a lot better, and, you have that random, just no explanation kind of situation where Thomas Brown is promoted, and then the following week he gets his first win, and then you see it afterwards on social media. He walks into the locker room, everybody pours water on him for his first win, right? It's going to happen. I think it's going to happen, especially with the 49ers being riddled with injuries. I don't know if Trent Williams is going to play. I don't know if Nick Bosa is going to play. They already lost Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason. So the offense has already been kind of up and down, and the Bears defense is very good. They have a very good defense, so I don't really like that matchup, honestly, and Caleb's been playing great over the last couple weeks. They probably should have beaten every team in their division. They should have beaten the Packers. They had a really good chance against the Vikings, and they had a great chance against the Lions. 3 of the best teams in the NFC, they could have beaten all of them. So I'm not saying it's just on Eberflus, but they have the talent. They have the potential, and I'm going to go with the Bears. I think they can win this game in San Francisco, no less, with a defense like that. Give me the Bears to win on the road and stop this losing streak that they're on over the last couple weeks. But that ultimately brings me to the Chargers and the Chiefs game, another divisional game, the second game of this series this year, and no surprise, the first game was only a 7-point win for the for the Chiefs, much like it has continued to be for the Kansas City Chiefs. Close game after close game after close game, right? Largely, I think the win that the Chiefs got over the Chargers last time was because the Chiefs defense was playing at an unbelievable level. And I'm not saying that they're, bottom of the NFL now, but I think you have noticed a bit of a drop-off there with that defense. And still, it feels like the offense, it's like it's there, but then sometimes you don't really get the same efficiency as you've gone before, obviously, for all these close games, right? And the Chargers, they have a very impressive defense as well. They only allowed 17 points in the first game. It hurts, though, that on the offensive side of the ball, you can't complement that defensive effort with J.K. Dobbins, right? He's currently on the injured reserve, and that hurts a lot, especially when you want to keep Patrick Mahomes on the sidelines. But I think that the Chiefs, in all these close games, like they can't keep getting away with it, right? Like that meme says. It's crazy, and someone's going to have to do it. Someone's going to have to beat them, and it should have been the Raiders. The Raiders should have beat them last week if it wasn't for the weird, just odd, bad snap that ruined the game for the Raiders. They lost the fumble, obviously, and the Chiefs somehow escaped with the win. They blocked a field goal to save a win. Someone's going to have to do it, and I think the Chargers, I believe in the Chargers that they're good enough. Jim Harbaugh is going to get these guys ready, and if the Raiders were that close, I have to believe the Chargers can do it, because the Raiders, for the Chargers missing J.K. Dobbins, they're still better than the Raiders. So if the Raiders could do it, in Kansas City no less, I'm going to go with the Chargers to win this game. Then it makes it even more interesting. The Bills would then jump to the number 1 seed at that point. So we're going to go in favor of that. Adding more drama to the end of the regular season is always a good thing, in my opinion. So those are all the game picks. Those are all the games for Week 14. We'll see how correct I am when we come back on Monday. But for right now, we're talking about the playoffs so much. I have one more segment to get to. Talking about the wild card round, specifically in this next segment, I wanted to rank the scariest and most dangerous wild card teams that teams 1 through 4 have to watch out for if they do match up against them in the first round of the playoffs. So I'm going to rank them right after this break. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining me back here on the show for our last segment of the week. And before we get fully into Week 14, I wanted to bring you guys just some rankings, because last night's game got me thinking about I keep saying it, about all the parity that we've seen in the NFL this season, with Kansas City and all their close games, almost losing to the Panthers, almost losing to the Raiders, to the Broncos, but they still continue to win. Then you look at the Buffalo Bills. They've played awesome, but they've gotten smacked by the Baltimore Ravens, who are a wild card team. They've lost to the Houston Texans, who aren't playing particularly great right now. Then you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, right? Surging, playing some of the best ball in the NFL right now, but they've lost to Tampa Bay, who could be a wild card team, and they lost to the Atlanta Falcons. So not two teams that are playing exceptional right now either. And I mean, you talk about parity. The Browns, they've won 3 games, and 2 of them have been against the Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, right? I mean, the Browns aren't going to be in the playoffs, but it's the idea that it feels like there's no easy matchup. There's no matchup that you look at. I would feel like as a team from 2 to 4 that you think, I really want to play them. I think we could destroy them and really get these playoffs off to a good start, right? I don't think you have that in the NFL or in either conference as of right now. Maybe, if I'm being honest, the Seahawks and the Falcons aren't looking great right now, but it's still, again, it's the playoffs, so you truly don't really know. But it's just about getting home field advantage, right? That's going to make a big difference. Like I mentioned with the Bills, they're undefeated so far this season in Buffalo. So playing on the road in the wild card round, or really at any point in the playoffs, is going to be difficult. So I wanted to rank the teams that I think would give the most trouble and that I would say, I guess, have the highest ceiling to reach a Super Bowl or to upset, a 1 seed, a 2 seed, or something like that. I wanted to rank them from 6 to 1, and just to go into the weekend with these rankings. So starting from number 6 of the wildcard teams right now, right? We're not projecting or anything like that. It's from the wildcard teams where they stand right now. And starting with number 6, technically the least likely team, in my opinion, to upset anybody would be the Washington Commanders. For some of the obvious reasons, right? The rookie quarterback is one thing, even though Jaden Daniels is phenomenal. It's really the first season that we've gotten this new Commanders team, right? New owner, even though he's been there before. New general manager, new offensive coordinator, obviously new head coach, a lot of players coming in free agency, and it all has played out perfectly, but I believe that at this point the defense is not really quite there as much as it is with all these other teams, quite honestly. I think the Commanders have the weakest defense, in my opinion, at this point in time, and I just see better ones out there, and especially in these playoffs, right, where there's so much parity, if you could have a defense that you could truly rely on and that can get you stops, I think that's going to be a huge factor for any team that's truly a contender. So I think the Commanders just have the weakest defense, and that just puts a lot of pressure on a rookie quarterback who not only has to carry the team already because of the defense, but also they have a lack of weapons. I mean, outside of Terry McLaurin, the other ones don't really stand out at you. I mean, Zach Ertz has been playing great. Zacchaeus contributes. Diami Brown contributes, but it's not what some of these other teams are working with. So I think for that reason, they could maybe be in a close game, but I don't think I'd be really threatened by them too much outside of Jaden Daniels, obviously. So they're number 6 for me. Then we move up one spot, and I got the Los Angeles Chargers. Again, similar to the Commanders, really the first season with Jim Harbaugh and this new identity that he's wanted to bring. Again, it's played out as good as you would have imagined, but unlike the Commanders, they have one of the best defenses in the NFL, and the coaching system's awesome. The offense is also a lot better than I think anybody would have imagined, but much like the Commanders also, the skill positions don't really fill me with a lot of confidence, and the Chargers could have the weakest skill position out of all of this list. I just like their defense better than the Commanders. These teams are pretty identical. So, I mean, they don't have a rookie quarterback. They have one of the best quarterbacks, in my opinion. So that's obviously a huge, swinging point, right? But I think their best receiver, their best skill position player is a rookie wide receiver. Ladd McConkey's awesome. He's playing great. But in the playoffs, teams are going to hone in on him, and they're going to take him away, right? Justin's not going to force the ball because he hasn't really done that all year. So he's going to try and look for everybody else. But I don't like Quinn Johnson, really. He drops the ball too much. Will Dissly, I mean, he's nice, but am I going to trust him in the playoffs? I wouldn't really. Jalen Reagor, he's all right. Joshua Palmer, not too bad. But you look at everybody else, and we're comparing them, and they don't really stack up, especially when you take away Ladd McConkey in the playoffs, which teams will do. So that's why I can't have the Chargers any higher than number 5. You're going to need to also score points. For as big as the defense is, you're going to need to put up points. So I have the Chargers there as of right now. Then we go to number 4. These 3 teams are kind of similar to each other. At number 4, I have the Denver Broncos. The first season, again, for this new regime in Denver, with Bo Nix. Sean Payton finally has his guy. They bring in all these new players. And again, it's gone as great as you would have imagined, right? And you could even say that they're overachieving. And I don't think that's, a knock to them in any way. But very similar to the Chargers, rookie, or not rookie quarterback. That's similar to the Commanders, right? But they just don't have a lot of weapons outside of Cortland Sutton. That's pretty much it. I mean, he could get you some stuff, but at some point, defenses are going to just hone in on him. They're going to double him. I would even triple him if I could. And then I would force Bo Nix to look elsewhere. And, I mean, that's when it becomes tricky. That's when you're relying on guys who are not stars, who haven't been relied to be the star, to all of a sudden be needed and dependent upon to kind of step up. And I don't think that really works too well when it's, you're in the playoffs for the first time. So the reason I have the Broncos ahead of both of these teams is because their defense is one of the best in the NFL. But again, outside of that, I think it's going to take a miraculous performance from Bo Nix, again, a rookie quarterback, to really get them past the first round, if at all. So that's why I have the Broncos there. They're not the top 3 because I think these top 3 teams are pretty significantly better than, the first 3. So at number 3, I have the Minnesota Vikings. The only knock I'll have against them is Sam Darnold. And I know I've been singing his praises recently and how he's had those game-winning, comeback kind of games, right? And I think the Vikings have the best group of skill position players out of all 6 of these teams. But, I mean, they also have an awesome head coach. I like Kevin O'Connell a lot. He's very good. Brian Flores has that defense playing well. The defense is great. They have some dominant factors, right? Like their defensive line and also their linebackers are very good. But the secondary is kind of mid. So, I mean, they're okay, but they do get burnt quite a bit. And, I mentioned Sam Darnold. He has no playoff experience. He has none. He's been to the playoffs with the 49ers, but he didn't play. And other than that, obviously, he hasn't really sniffed the playoffs at all. And he's playing awesome this year. He's doing very well, but it's different in the playoffs, right? I can't really trust something or someone that hasn't really been there. And this Vikings team has been in this spot where they've had all the other talent around them, but they just need the quarterback to kind of lead them through it. And I don't know. I hope Darnold can do it, but I don't know how he's going to react or what he's going to do with the pressure when you know that if you lose this game, you're done. That's it. It's over. So he's never really faced that kind of pressure before. So that's really the biggest knock I have on him. Everything else, it's great. But the quarterback, being the quarterback is a little bit worrying. So that's why I have them at number 3. Then at number 2, I have the Baltimore Ravens, right? They just made it to the AFC Championship game, but I have them at number 2 because of that passing defense that they have currently. Everything on offense is awesome. Derek's awesome. Lamar's an MVP candidate. Zay Flowers is playing better. Mark Andrews is playing like his usual self. Rashad Bateman has even played better. And, I mean, their offensive line is great too. But you wonder about, I just mentioned all those good things. You wonder how they're going to use Derrick Henry. Are they going to go away from him like we've seen a couple of times this year? Are they just not going to use him and then, get criticized the next day for the same mistake? Lamar, how is he throwing the ball? We've seen a couple of times that he's missed on some throws, and it doesn't make you any more confident about him and his throwing ability. So do they become so one-dimensional that they start throwing a lot and maybe it's not as progressive or it's not as fluent as obviously running the ball is? So are they going to run into the same problems with the not sticking to their identity and things like that? And also, like I mentioned, the defense. they're going to be playing against some top-tier passing offenses, right? Josh Allen, Patrick, even CJ, Justin Herbert, top-tier quarterbacks. Russell Wilson, I'll throw him in there as well. Even Bo Nix has been playing pretty well. And then you look at the receivers, right? George Pickens, Cortland Sutton, Mark Andrews, Travis, Rashee Rice maybe if he comes back. Amari Cooper is another one. Nico Collins. You're going to need to stop some of these guys. And I'm not so sure they can do it based on what I've seen so far. They've improved it a little bit, but they still rank amongst some of the worst in the NFL. So I feel like that could be something to bite them, especially if their offense isn't on the field and it is stuttering, like we've seen previously. They're not number one, obviously, so I got to put the Packers there. I started this whole show talking about how I haven't really lost confidence in them, and that's why I have them really at number one, right? Their defense, being able to hold somebody and being able to come up with a couple stops, I think is going to be huge, is my only doubt with them. Because you look at the games that they've lost, they've given up big games to Saquon Barkley. They've given up 4th down conversions just last night, and they were down early against Minnesota, right? So can this defense, come in and give us something, right? They're able to get turnovers, right? That's kind of what's been saving them a little bit, right? Because if they weren't first in turnovers and maybe like middle of the league or potentially even towards the bottom of the league, I think this team would look a lot different. They would look a bit more suspect if they weren't able to get these turnovers, but they're able to do it, right? You can't fault them for, doing it now. They're able to get these turnovers, so it's been a pretty consistent thing for them. So that's great, but can they hold somebody? Can they force a couple punts, a couple of turnover on downs and things like that to, move on in the playoffs, right? I think they're going to need it, especially when you're playing Philadelphia again, Detroit again, Minnesota probably, potentially in a matchup or something like that. They're going to need to make these stops because their offense is looking good. They just went 4 for 5 against the Lions in the red zone, right? And Jordan Love is getting better. He's taking care of the football a lot better. And Josh Jacobs is trending like straight up, not even like on a curve or an angle, just straight up. He is playing phenomenal right now, and I think it's making their offense that much better. Jordan Love also doesn't take a lot of negative plays either. They hardly ever sack him, and he's cut down on the turnovers recently. So if only that defense can kind of string together a couple more stops, I think the Packers are the most dangerous wildcard team. From what I've seen, from how they're built, I believe that they could do it. They have the offense to do it. I'm just waiting to see the defense, step up even more. So that's the list. Those are my rankings, and that's how we're going to end the show today. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Chip Shot Football Podcast. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as the GSMC Podcast Network channel and the GSMC Sports Network channel, where you can find more coverage and more content around this show, obviously with more live shows, shorts, and individual segment videos as well. We're going to go into the weekend now. I'll see you guys back here on Monday. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys back here on Monday when we discuss Week 14 in almost all of its totality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't want